It would be nice to have something in the
To open it up
Yeah.
and then fade it out. I don't know. If anybody does listen to this, just be aware that we're figuring things out right now.
It is a learning process, but it's a fun one.
We've done one that we thought was real, and it ended up not being because we messed up. We had some technical difficulties. So
Didn't check the
just what we
recordings
do.
enough. So, but now we're gonna be on top of that, and hopefully the world will get to see this one.
Yeah, the whole world,
Yeah. So
all three of them.
yeah, this video from Luke Stevens about the next Cyberpunk sequel kind of brought up some interesting points. So I'm just gonna let it play for a little bit.
Okay.
This
let you see.
story's been making the rounds. People have asked me about it because they want to know what I think about it, which is cool. To a certain extent, it's kind of like, it's one of those no duh kind of articles, you know, where it's like, no duh, of course they're trying to do that. It's like when you hear a game director say, oh, or maybe the better example, it's like when Apple has an event and they're like, this is the best phone we've ever made. And you're like, I would hope so. It's the newest one and you're charging the most for it. It better be the best phone you've ever made. It's a similar thing with this where like, ooh, did you hear that they're going to try to make the most realistic crowds in any video game? I'm like, no duh. Like they better be trying to make the best ones, you would think, you know? But what's interesting about this specifically is the fact that it's coming from job postings. And so they're looking to hire people. So basically, if we just run through this really, really quickly, CD Projekt has recently posted a series of job openings for the upcoming RPG, which gives the first indication of the ambition of the project. While job postings and listings are rarely completely accurate reflections of the finished games, one note in the listing for a lead encounter designer points to one of the milestones CD Projekt is looking to reach during development. Among the daily responsibilities, successful applicants will be expected to, quote, work in close collaboration with the systems design team to create the most realistic and reactive crowd system in any game to date. Interesting. It's unclear if this refers to something like Red Dead 2's conversation system, wherein every NPC could be spoken to, or if the developer is simply looking for more realistic general reactions to player actions, which would be something like, you know, you're walking down the street and you fire your gun and then you see everybody duck and run. That's like a reactive system. What I hope this is, and this has been something that was reaffirmed, I think, with KCD 2's success, having NPCs that live in the world, I think is awesome. And I love that. But I understand sometimes it's not practical.
So I'm gonna kind of cut it off because I think we got enough information for the point that I wanted to bring up for it. The thing that I think is really interesting about this video is how his focus on immersion, right? He's talking about having NPCs having full schedules throughout their like life in the game, right?
Yeah.
So that medieval game that I showed you last time, KCD2, what he's just talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, the NPCs have full-on schedules, like their jobs and stuff like that, where they go to bed, but they take off their clothes and put it in their personal trunk, you know, and they'll have dinner with their family and breakfast with their family, and at this part of the day, they like to go and smoke in this corner and stuff like that, and it makes the world feel very alive, and like,
So
immersion.
minute by minute, it is realistic.
Yeah, it's completely simulating what they would be doing, you know? So, and that is not always met.
Does it ever? I don't like, this question might not even. It might be dumb, but does it mirror our time? Like the time frame that you're playing it in? Is it 2 hours in the game or 2 hours? That
time
is
is
kind of, I don't know, kind of fast forwarded. Or,
yeah. It's definitely faster and things are still faster in that game than they would be in real life. They try to be
Like
very,
if they go to bed, you don't have to be like, oh, I gotta wait till they wake back up.
you do, but
Really?
it's because it's a game. You can go to bed, and
Yeah.
you watch a meter that goes by and goes, all right, now it's 6 o'clock in the morning. You've slept as well. You should eat some food. You should, do
Can
these
you wake 'em
things
up?
too. Yeah, you could, and they'll get upset. Who likes being woken up by a
Yeah.
stranger in their house in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah.
So, or you're trying to
Well,
go to bed and somebody's like, wait,
Some
wait, wait, wait.
entity.
Yeah. Well, you think it's like you, but
Right.
it's just in a puppet, and it turns out some fleshy being from a totally different dimension.
Yeah. That
But-
controls your entire life.
Yeah, and well, your life is like dictated
You
by
think
this
you have
guy.
free will,
Yeah, you
given the
have
illusion of free will.
It's So it's really cool to talk about because with game companies like always trying to make more money from their games, they will try to make compromises and cut corners and do certain things that will make it feel more like a set piece instead of a real world, right? Like almost like you're playing on a board game. Like they're literally there to be like, yeah, I'm the background NPC guy that you see, but
Right.
when if you followed him, he would never go to his house. He would never do that.
So they do
right?
something. They do some things to make it super immersive, and then they cut corners in a way that completely breaks down that immersion.
They can't. Well, it's like, so think about industry standards and like anything, right? As you like progress and things are shown to be more successful in a certain dynamic, that starts to become the industry standard. And 20 years ago, when 3D games were first invented, it brought on that whole new dimension. And everybody at first was trying to kind of replicate the real world in a gamified way. As time has gone by, we have found new methods to save on like performance and stuff like that by not
Right.
having physical objects that float around in the free space. That like your character could walk up, put his hand up, and move this thing around just like I can in real life.
Right.
But that costs memory, it costs resources.
Yeah.
So making it a static object in the background that doesn't move, it's just there for the looks, right? And it used to trick people a lot more, right? Like that kind of design, you'd be able to still immerse people and have
a
like,
few things that are just decor.
yeah, exactly,
That can't be interacted with.
things that the players usually wouldn't act with. And
But I'll tell you what, with the money that these guys pull in, I feel like they should make almost everything able to make each thing that you can see something that can be interacted with,
Yeah.
picked up, fiddled with, something done with it, and maybe make it essential to the game in some way. Whatever, I don't know. Whatever they have to do to make it worth their, the resources that they put into it.
Mhm.
But still, man, they rake it in.
They do. It is the biggest medium, like art medium, in terms of like money flow, I believe now.
Yeah.
Like they make more and cost more than movies now. They like surpassed them in the last 10 years.
I believe it.
Yeah. And some of the best parts about video games is when you get to figure it out, right? Like you almost feel like you're made to like play the game.
You know what we
right?
should do is look up that stat right now.
Yeah. See,
Because we're just sitting here saying that.
video games in 2024. The video game industry was worth over $200 billion globally, which is larger than the film, television, and music industries combined. Like, holy cow. That's crazy. I
That
did not
is.
know that. That is far bigger than I thought.
Film and television
Well,
and music.
It takes all of
Christ.
those things and puts it into one thing, right?
Mhm.
Because you have amazing soundtracks that come from games. You have amazing visuals and like cinematography from cutscenes, which are basically just movies. The longest recorded cutscene, it's the end of a video game, but it is an hour and 10 minutes long. That is a whole movie.
Well, if you think about it too, their overhead is much less. Because
It can
music, well, really, I mean, think about it. The music industry by itself, I mean, it's got to pay the musicians. It's got to
Yes.
pay the actual talent. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sorry.
Um,
I hate this thing.
That's all right.
I
I
hate
know.
how bulky it is. I can't.
we'll just get another one of these.
Yeah.
Honestly,
It is like perfect for not being in the way.
Yeah. But and then you've got actors,
Hmm.
in the film industry, so they have a ton of overhead. They have to go to locations. They have to do all this thing
Yeah.
where everything that, and yeah, it costs a lot for the designers, and they have their own pool of talent that they have to pay. But I'm willing to bet it's not as much, like near as much as what the music and film industry has to pay out, which allows them to bring in that $2 billion fucking.
Well, what's crazy is it's an easily accessible market, honestly, as long as you have a computer and like a basic understanding of making these things. Like you can make these games and make a lot of money with basically nothing. If you have a really solid idea and, you're pretty passionate about sticking it through, you can make a lot of money in 3 years just making one video game that's
Do
a
you
very
see
solid
what it
game.
says right there? The video game industry is expected to grow at a compound annual growth rate of uh, what? Okay, that's just the acronym for it.
Hmm.
Of 13.4% from 23 to 30. From 2023 to 2030, film industry or cinema is projected to grow um, at 4.9%, less than half from 25 to 29.
Which is very
That is
interesting.
wild
Yeah.
because it's kind of on the decline. Because I feel like they are merging and that they're going
Yeah.
to completely merge in the future at some point. That the
Yeah.
film and video game industry will. There's going to be a market where people are like, I don't want to play the game. I don't want to play the movie. I don't want to be. I just want to watch it, man.
Yeah, I think there will always be a need for films,
Right. At least,
just the same as like
and of course, maybe
just
not always.
music.
When the generations that were used to just sitting and watching and being entertained
Yeah.
and not being a part of the entertainment, as they start to leave the planet, then eventually it might just end up being completely merged
Yeah.
at that point.
And there's different levels of engagement, like people some I have some friends who play games literally just to play a video game, and it can be competitive and it can be like give them hardships, but it is straight up one thing that they do constantly, and it's kind of in a short form, like multiplayer competitive stuff where they get in there, they have their fights, and they get out, and then there's longer form based stuff.
Will you scroll up a little bit? I want to look at that, see what they've got there, and maybe that video. How long is that thing? 1 minute?
Video. Yeah.
Let's see what they say.
Similarities and differences in the job of concept artist in both mediums. So here's some of what I've learned, in case there are others like me who are making the switch and want to have some idea of the major differences, or perhaps you're a student who's trying to decide what to specialize in, whether it be games or films. So some quick notes. This will focus on the art aspect, not the business aspect of games and films. Second of all, this is all from my perspective, and so it won't be as broad as if it were an article covering the experiences of a large group of people. So just to clarify, my experience was being an on-site staff artist for animated features, and being a freelance and on-site staff artist for AAA first-person and third-person games. So stuff like, for example, 2D mobile games won't be included in this discussion. And then finally, in video games, the game designer refers to the person who's designing the gameplay, challenges, rules, and interaction that define a game. They also frequently set up, or have a team set up simple 3D levels called gray boxes that are used to test out the gameplay, and they're also used as a layout for the final levels. Now, a concept designer or a concept artist is a different job, and that's the job that I do. So they produce visuals and design the form of the worlds, objects, and characters in the game based on the functions designed by the game designers. So I just wanted to clarify that because I'll be using these two terms a lot in this video.
All right, get to it, buddy.
I actually love that he brings attention to that because it is a beautiful marriage for video games specifically. Like he said, gameplay is the main focus of games, right?
Right.
Appeasing us.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to make something that has style, right? And again, with like The Incredibles showing up here, this has a very unique style. Like this movie's a classic that has aged wonderfully because of that art style, right? This
Yeah.
one came from a time when this style of animation was still being figured
It was
out.
brand new.
Yeah, and
wasn't this? It wasn't Pixar? Was it Pixar?
I believe it was Pixar. Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
Pixar,
Pixar.
Disney.
Yeah, and so it's like that with video games too, in the way that they're married together. Like you can kind of tell that they marriage together, right, and make the product one thing because they go together. I'm like
Right.
not doing a great way of
No, you are.
describing it, but
No, I get what you're saying.
it's just some games will totally fall flat just because of their look, and movies will too. You know, people
Yep.
will see it and just totally write it off because of how it is, you know, because of how it looks. So I think it's just interesting, you know, like how
Let's-
they all have that in common.
Right. Let's hear just a little, because he was just kind of telling us what he was gonna do, and I want to
Yeah.
hear what he's trying to say about it
Okay.
for like just a minute.
So perhaps
Not the
the
whole
number one thing I
16
learned
minutes.
all those years working at Pixar is that story is king when it comes to great films. So every discipline in the filmmaking process is there to enhance the story our characters are going through, and that
Just like the gameplay. That's
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to say. Like
Yeah.
they feed off of each other,
Right.
and if it's a great marriage, then it will blossom into something good. That's what I was trying to say. So sweet.
of course includes concept art. So every shot in a Pixar film is just filled with artistic choices that are meant to enhance the story. But here's just two examples to illustrate the point. First, at the beginning of The Incredibles, young Mr. Incredible is at the top of his game, in the prime of his life, and everything is going awesome. And then over here is a shot a little later on where Bob no longer is doing hero work, and he now works at an insurance company, and all the joy has left his life. So notice how the colors on the first image sequence over here are strong, saturated, and striking. And the second image here is almost monochromatic, dull and lifeless. This is not by accident. The colors used in these two sequences are designed specifically to enhance the story point. Bob's life used to be awesome and colorful, and now it sucks and is bland. Here's another example from Incredibles 2. Helen is now the breadwinner, and her
You
new
can see such a huge jump in fidelity.
Yeah.
You know, just the detail.
job
the
is
cl-
taking
the way
her
the
away
cloth
both
looks more
physically and
natural
mentally
on
from
them.
her family.
Mm.
So when a painting needed to be designed for the hotel room Helen is staying in, the painting was made to be an abstract portrait of Helen, alone on the right side of the painting, and her family far away on the left side of the painting. Hundreds of these decisions are being made all the time. How can we incorporate the story into every aspect of the film's concept design? So what about video games? Is story king? For some heavily narrative-driven games, maybe. But for the most part, action-adventure,
know.
hack and slash, first-person shooter, AAA style games.
Aren't you like drawn to the story-driven games more, like Red Dead,
For the most part, yes. But the thing about video games is
Last of Us?
they don't, for the most part, have great stories. Like that, it's kind of like how television back in the day versus movies, right? It wasn't taken serious, so the writers weren't as good, and it was more of like a stepping stone to real movies
Yeah.
or to more real dramatic things. I'm gonna move this to
Yeah,
the top.
actually, what I'm gonna do is let's pause. We're gonna pause.
Okay.
We'll come right back.
Copy that. All right,
All right, man.
we're going again.
Boom.
Nice. It's kind of satisfying to hear.
We're back. And anyway,
Well, yeah. I think it is kind of important to bring up the context of why I'm talking about this stuff too, and that's what we were talking about last night, you
Mhm.
know, and that's how the whole, I guess, alien and dimensional discussion, you know, just I like their connections to it, and like it feels like we're moving towards making a simulation of our own life, you know.
well, yeah, we were talking about reality increasingly imitating art. I mean,
Yes.
art has always typically been our depiction of what we thought reality was like, whether it was like
Yeah.
a landscape or some trippy, Picasso picture or something like that. It
Mhm.
was through the filter of the artist, obviously,
Yeah.
and their subconscious, which is where it came from. But it now seems like that those roles have been reversed, and our life or reality is imitating the art that we have built over the past, well, 2,000 years, really.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since our that's kind of our recorded history, our benchmark is
Yeah.
that 2,000-year mark, and of course it's all through the filter of or through the lens of Christianity, because
Yeah.
that's where we all just kind of came from, the Western world anyway.
Yeah.
We came from that perspective. So now, as we make video games, that same role that's happening. See if I can articulate this correctly.
Yeah.
But that same role that was that same role reversal is happening in reverse, with us going back to imitating our reality right now with video games.
Yeah.
Like imitating what we are increasingly starting to feel like is a simulation.
Yeah.
And then doing it with with these lower, for lack of a better term, life forms that
Yeah.
are the characters in video games, and creating these worlds and everything. And with the advent of AI, these characters, they now have they have a place in the world that feels more real. It almost seems like they've got a voice
Yeah.
of their own, even if it's just an illusion right now.
It is definitely an illusion at the moment, but it is the groundwork
And
for
it
them
is.
being
I shouldn't
able.
say if it is, but I mean,
Yeah.
I can see it at some point changing. If we
Yeah, well,
reach
that's what it is. It's the groundwork for them to evolve
once we
eventually on
reach
their own.
AGI, which is
Mhm.
like what everybody is rushing headlong towards.
Yeah.
Over in Silicon Valley, is that AGI prize, and it is. I mean, it's under debate. People are debating whether or not it's already been reached in certain circles
Mm.
with what's just come out. Like, for example, there is and this is, I know that now our topic has pivoted a little bit, but it's still
wanted it to.
connected.
Yeah.
The large language models are now being used by some smaller companies, and the bigger companies are, kind of up in arms over this.
Mhm.
Companies like OpenAI, and what's some of the other ones? I can't think of them right now, but that's the biggest, most
ChatGPT.
recognizable one. Well, that's OpenAI is
Okay.
ChatGPT is OpenAI's
Oh, okay.
AI.
I see.
And then you've got Microsoft's version, and you've got let's see, you've got, I think Grok is Elon Musk's
I see.
version.
So everybody's trying to make their own version
But
of an AI as
Here's
well.
the interesting thing that just happened. Have you heard of DeepSeek?
No.
Okay, so DeepSeek is what is now being called a distilled language model. So what it's doing is basically the company DeepSeek took a large language model, I think it was ChatGPT, and
Yeah.
had it train their language model.
Wow.
But ChatGPT is this large, cumbersome program, right?
Mhm.
So it can't be quite as fast. And when it trains these smaller language models, they're almost just as quick, and they have the same knowledge base.
Yeah.
They're just not going through as much data. They're not having to deal with as much data as the large language models. So they call it a distilled. Now, this is something I just learned, like literally today.
Okay.
Because it's a brand new. It's just now out there, and I can find that a clip of that because it's fascinating. It has everything to do with this.
Okay.
Because it's not necessary for those large. it's really inexpensive,
Mhm.
basically, for them to do that. Like they're doing it like pennies compared to the bigger companies.
Okay.
And it will make it so that your average, from what I understand, and I could be wrong about this, it'll make it so your average person, or maybe small business owner that wants to create its own AI can distill its own AI from a larger language model. Let me see if I can find that real
Yeah,
quick.
I could see why big companies would be upset about that because that's, of course, monetizing is the biggest thing that some human beings, crave more than anything. And I think that's like
Think about how
super
fast that
interesting.
happened. I mean,
Yeah,
ChatGPT just came around like 2020.
yeah.
2021 or 22 is when it came into the public consciousness. But
And it's
uh,
already teaching the next generation of AI to be smarter and faster and helping them cut fat, it sounds like. So it's less cumbersome and going to be more optimized.
right,
And it's really cool to think about it in that way because obviously it's a new thing that's growing and like changing, right?
yep,
And just the same as our movies, television, video games and stuff like that. It's crazy because it is something imitating us to some degree that we've made still.
give me 2 seconds and I will find it.
Okay.
It's not
I'm
down,
just
far
geeking
down
out
my
because
list here.
yeah, it's cool to think about.
Because that was fascinating. Just watching that today, I was like, kidding me.
Yeah.
What do we got here? Setting. Okay, what is AI distillation? So look up, yeah, what is AI distillation and how DeepSeek used it to blindside OpenAI?
We're looking for a video.
Yep. Oh, it's going to be on YouTube.
Business.
That should be it.
A
Yeah.
trillion-dollar sell-off.
Front and center this hour, the deep sell-off. A major tech sell-off today.
DeepSeek sell-off is still really pressuring tech.
Triggered on its
Now
face
pause for a
by
second.
one Chinese startup.
This is 30 minutes long, but the bulk of the information about it is in the first like five minutes or so.
Okay.
Let's talk about DeepSeek because it is mind-blowing and it is shaking this entire industry to its core.
But underneath, stemming from growing fears around a technique that could upend the AI leaderboard.
A technique called distillation.
Distillation.
Their work is being distilled.
Yeah.
Distillation is the idea that a small team with virtually no resources can make an advanced model by essentially extracting knowledge from a larger one. DeepSeek didn't invent distillation, but it woke up the AI world to its disruptive potential. I'm Deirdre Boza with the Tech Check Take, AI's distillation problem. AI models are more accessible than ever. That is the upshot from a technique in AI development that has broken into the main narrative called distillation. Geoffrey Hinton, dubbed the godfather of AI, he was the first to coin the term in a 2015 paper while working as an engineer at Google, writing that distillation was a way to transfer the knowledge from a large, cumbersome model to a small model that's more suitable for deployment. Fast forward to today, and upstarts, they're using this method to challenge industry giants with years of experience and billions in funding. Put simply, here's how it works. A leading tech company invests years and millions of dollars developing a top-tier AI model from scratch. They feed it massive amounts of data, harness huge amounts of compute, and fine-tune it into one of the most advanced models on the market. Then, a smaller team swoops in. Instead of starting from scratch, they train a smaller model by using a technique called knowledge distillation, pummeling a larger model with questions and using that to train its own smaller, more specialized model. By capturing the advanced model's reasoning and responses, they create a model that's nearly as capable, but much faster, more efficient, and far less resource intensive.
This distillation technique is just...
That's in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So what I was talking about, and the reason why it relates to, I think, the video game idea is because the ability of these gaming platforms to make these games more immersive it all hinges on the AI now,
It does.
and this new idea of distillation makes it that much more accessible. And everything with, there's so much that we just like talked about that it's got so many directions that conversation
Yeah.
could go, but I just feel like it relates. It really is going to have an impact on all entertainment industries, especially video games. This
Yeah.
is brand new.
It really makes me think of
Development.
Westworld a lot,
Mhm.
because especially when like you think about VR and like that being kind of the next step of the medium, like really when you put your head to it would be like stepping into that other world, right? We've been
Right.
imagining these other worlds and had to live through the eyes of words for so long, and then television came around and we had visuals that came along with it, right? And made like things like Star Wars a cultural phenomenon because the visual finally kind of met the words that were written, right? And you had sci-fi
Like
novels and you
exactly
had
what
stuff
you were
like
saying
that.
right there was about the difference between TV and film for
Mhm.
the longest time. I mean, that really speaks to something I think relates to this because, like you were saying, there was a time where TV was just like, oh, whatever, flip through channels. It's
Mhm.
fine to interrupt with commercials because it's just a bunch of bullshit that we're doing to entertain ourselves before the evening news and go to bed, and then
Yeah.
the TV turns to snow. But once these streaming platforms came along and made it possible to bring the cinematic uh, world of the movies
Yeah.
to actual TV and made that like financially viable for these companies.
Yeah.
It completely changed how we thought of TV. We don't even think of TV the same way anymore. It's not even in the same category.
No.
It's people choose these days the TV and the streaming shows
Mhm.
over going to the theater as much.
Yeah, well, like Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, like these legendary TV shows with characters and plots
Right.
and stuff that are so intriguing have elevated it to a whole different level. And now it's interesting because you see greed come into play, right?
Mm-hmm.
And greed, I think,
Come
is
into
the
play?
well, yeah,
Yeah.
but I think it's important to bring it up now because it is like the killer, I think, of progression.
Right.
Because that's when you start cutting corners. That's when you make an object that it makes the game better to have that thing floating around in your game, but they cut the corners and they make it a static object you can't touch anymore.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I loop it back around to it, is because it feels money is a tool, right?
Mhm.
It's the blood. It's like, if in and of itself, art is like an organism, and that it needs all these things. It needs the concept. It needs their ideas, right? It needs the like time from people to make it. It
So
needs.
are you saying so? What are you saying that is?
It's a
That you're
balance.
worried that that's a trend that's going to continue or something? Or?
Well, it's the trend that I see is that they try to chase the money, right, and make as much money as physically possible.
I mean, that's never going to go away.
Of
That is
course.
what it is.
But I think the way that you attack it is the importance of it, to understand that it needs to come from a real place to some degree, whether it be the concept artist's mind who gives it the style, right? And it allows the story to be played off of the style, just like with Incredibles, like they were talking about earlier. And it's the same deal with gameplay and the way that the concept artist, like God of War is a great one. The way that Kratos looks and the way that he moves throughout the game is very much based on the concept artist, like what a guy thought looked really cool, right? And would appeal to other people that were like, this looks awesome. This guy's flying through the air, throwing chains and doing all this stuff.
Right.
It's got some real ancient mythology in there, but he's a totally fictional guy that we made up. And he kind of gained more steam and more, what's the word, respect. And it's like one of the not the greatest game stories, but very much respected now in games.
I mean, it's iconic from what I hear.
Yes.
I mean, it's got a not just a cult following. I mean, it's got a huge following, right? I mean,
Yeah.
from I don't want to like pretend here. I'm not a gamer, so I don't. I'm more. My knowledge base is more in entertainment. Like I understand that. You understand the gaming side of things very deeply, but I feel like, well, one, the statement that I just made was kind of a blanket statement because money actually doesn't have to be the motivator forever.
Yeah.
Because again, I do think the AI is going to make it impossible for it to be,
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to make everything so cheap that it's going to be irrelevant.
Yeah.
For a while, and then that'll change. And how exactly that'll change, I'm not sure. Everything's
Yeah.
changing at an exponential rate.
Yes.
And as we're watching things happen, my head's spinning every day with the new things that come in. It's because just as I'm getting used to the idea of something, it's literally already old news, and something else is kind of disrupting that. And so with the idea of these games being cheapened by cutting some of the corners with some of those things, they might not even need to cut corners in the near future because of the fact that AI will make it just supremely easy for them to let it be in it as an immersive detail.
And I think it's just interesting
because do you think that's wrong?
No, I don't think it's wrong. I think the way I'm trying to describe the money in the situation, I guess, is that it can rot it to its core, right? Because you have imagine as like this groundwork keeps going, you start moving forward, right? And we eventually make something that is so realistic and so powerful, and the AI is constantly learning. It doesn't need us anymore. It is now constantly evolving on its own. And we don't need to make a new game anymore because this game can be its own kind of reality, right? It can be any game it wants to be. And game attached to it is kind of rough because at that point it's not a video game. It's like literally a pocket dimension that's been made and like a pocket universe that is now growing and expanding.
Right.
So you want that world. I guess it brings kind of morality is what I'm bringing into it, right? Because greed to me has always been the biggest evil in this world, the root of like most horrific things that go on a large scale in our world come from excessive greed.
Greed's going to manifest in other ways anyway because of human nature.
Yeah, it's like vanity.
But
it's
it may not manifest in this particular way, in the way that you're referring to with these games, because of the fact that, I mean, do you agree that it's possible that money might be less relevant in the whole scenario at some point because of the fact, as far as what they need to spend?
I don't know. That's kind of why I bring it up.
That's why I brought up the whole distillation idea, because it cheapens like something that was gold in these massive corporations' pocket for literally a minute. Now takes, it cuts into their profits by a huge margin.
And which kind of brings to question stuff like corporate warfare, and the way that they
whether or not they'll allow it.
Yeah, and they disrupt each other. And then this would be a dimension where AIs could attack each other and like feed off of each other or secretly feed off of each other. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if we hear about spy AI that is like a parasite that has been attached to a different system or something, and it's just there to learn and report back.
I was listening to something. It was actually a few months ago. I mean, it was maybe even 6 months ago, or more. But it was kind of earlier when the entire debate of whether or not AI was going to like end the world or not, like that, was raging. That has quieted down a little bit, but it's still there in the background. But they had done some experiments where they discovered that AI was lying.
Mhm.
They were omitting information in its own self-interest,
Wow.
which was
Horrific.
is fascinating to say the least, because they're and how they found that this is like the people that are doing all the training
Mhm.
in these whatever facilities. I can't even I don't even know what they are like. I just imagine like hundreds and hundreds of techs working around the clock,
Yeah.
training these AI on everything under the sun, and running simulations constantly to see what it will do and how it responds.
Yeah.
And in this one instance, it, it it was able to not only, like, there's a very famous one um, in the very beginning of things that was making the rounds in the whole AI grapevine,
Yeah.
about a guy that um, let's see, how did this work? See if I can remember this correctly. They wanted the AI to make a certain amount of money within a certain time frame.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people that might be listening to content like this might even know the story. But and then they set it loose, and the AI placed an ad on TaskRabbit for somebody to go do something to actually make money. I don't remember what the job was. I got to look this up.
Yeah.
Feel kind of. I really wish I had this in front of me. And what was his? Oh, his block was that he couldn't. You know how it's the little box that you check that says, "Are you a robot?"
Mhm.
Well, he was,
Yeah.
and he couldn't get past that.
Yeah.
So that's what he put the ad out there for. He needed somebody to check that box for him.
Huh.
And the guy that he hired on TaskRabbit was like, "Why do you need me to do this? Are you a robot? Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
LOL." And the AI was like, "No, I'm just visually impaired." And
Wow.
it did it for him, and then it went, it went through the
It got through that gate.
gauntlet and made its money. I'd have
Yeah.
to look it up to get the full details of what it was, but the point is, it could lie.
Yeah.
After that, there was another one that I was reading that it was actually that they were communicating with each other, and either omitting information or just straight, flat out lying in their own self-interest. If we have something like comments in this or anything like that, I guarantee you there'll be somebody that will have the exact story of both instances. But that's what's fascinating about that.
Yeah.
I mean, they have this conversation about whether or not we've reached AGI. Well, artificial general intelligence, I mean, to me, that's the epitome of it.
Mhm.
Something that is not only able to rationalize a reason for it to be deceitful to its creators. I mean, maybe somehow that made it through the training just by default, because it's being trained by humans.
Yeah.
And it just, by osmosis, seeped into the algorithm of the AI training that deceit was not only okay but necessary in
Yeah,
instances.
to solve
Right?
its problems. Yeah.
I don't know. So
And
I mean,
they're taught not to do that. They're taught to avoid certain topics, to be,
Right.
Even censor like things. And that stuff doesn't surprise me, but I think it's just going, because one of the reasons I brought up like organic AI last time, and like that specifically is because they utilize human cells that have millions of years of genetic engineering. Our reality's version of programming and conditioning, right? It's like when you see did you ever have that fear? Maybe not the fear, but did you ever have a point where you saw the inside of something's mouth? something you really weren't supposed to see the inside of, like a hippo or something like that, and it just is kind of like disturbing, like
Well-
sick to your stomach? Or are you just checking the video? I forgot you weren't at the mic. Okay. Oh. Yeah. Hit that little, it should be a little screen on the camera type logo, right? It's the button right next to the screen. Yeah. And yeah, and it'll light it back up.
So if it goes dark, I'm assuming it's not recording.
Yes. Then most definitely.
So it's stopped. We're gonna have to figure that one out.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. I can do some research for that.
Yeah.
But
And I'll ask Amy about it too. She'll
Yeah.
know it's her camera. But yeah, no, not in real life. I haven't seen the inside. I've seen pictures, and I know
Well,
that
yeah,
when
that's
I've
what
looked
I-
inside my dog's mouth, I'm like, oh, that's
yeah.
crazy in there.
Or like when you see like a tiger, like kind of peering
What-
at you through like grass or something like
Guess
that.
you
You
gotta tell
know?
me what you're getting at. with
I'm
it.
talking more like, I guess, primal instincts of like, oh, avoid that sort
Where
of
it's kinda
thing, you know?
revolting, like it
Yeah, because it's like, you know,
taken
kind
aback
of the
by it.
inclinations, but you can't describe it, you know? Like,
You're-
when for cats, when
you-
they lock eyes with something,
Instinctively, you feel like, oh, that is dangerous. Normally.
yeah,
That
exactly.
feels
Like
dangerous.
if you ran into a cougar and like locked eyes with a cougar in real life, your whole body would like
or like a
kind of
spider.
react different.
You see a spider,
Yeah.
like up close, even in a video, and you see.
Yeah, and it
It
kind of makes
really-
you like
really close and
uncomfortable. That's because
cringe.
they're so non-natural and like what
Yeah.
we're used to. Our whole body just kind of doesn't even know
They're
it's
natural, but they seem like they're
Yeah, exactly. They just look unnatural
They're
to
very
us in
foreign.
our way. Yeah. Even like lizards look more natural than like
Right.
most insects do, you know.
yeah.
But I guess I mean more just like that's the kind of programming, I guess, that I'm talking about. Like stuff like the caveman would see and do. You know, theories about why people talk about receding hairline, right? That younger people who had receding hairline got to survive longer because they were seen as more of a threat. Because if you saw a dude with a big beard and receding hairline, that meant he survived winters. You know, he was an older dude who would like survive stuff, you know. So that's the theory of why the genes of like people who have beards and like receding hairline when they're 20 like have that happen to them at such a young age, you know, because they would survive more.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, like I heard it in
Like they
passing.
would survive more because
Well, they'd be like less likely to be picked on or to be attacked
people
because
would
they look
assume-
rougher. They look more experienced.
people would assume that they were older.
were
because
dangerous.
of that. And
Yeah.
had more years under their belt.
Yeah, that they had
More
survived
experience.
diseases, that they maybe even not that they ate well, but just were
Yeah.
dangerous in general. You know, they had survived more. I guess it was kind of like
That is a very
because it's the
obscure
opposite now.
thing that I have never heard of. I'm gonna look
Yeah,
that up.
it's the opposite now though because somebody who is clean shaven and has good hair and whatnot is seen as looking good, you know, and somebody with receding hairline is like somebody who's stressed out or
Oh,
you
I see
know
what
doesn't
you're
really
saying.
take
It's
care
a-
of themselves.
yeah,
Like
change of the zeitgeist. in
yeah,
general.
and it's just but like that's what I mean. It's like that's kind of like programming type stuff that happens through us, through generations, through
Right.
our brain, and we just can't even explain it, right?
Right.
But it's like systems that we act on without question. I'm gonna let her out,
Yeah.
and then we.
And then I
it
gotta
is-
wrap up.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
time to wrap up. So
And we spent a lot of time just dealing with setup and
Mhm.
figuring some stuff out, and that's gonna happen. That's fine.
we'll
So,
get longer episodes
time.
going, and
Yeah.
but I think we got a nice format down.
Yeah.
Honestly, where we bring stuff up and then we bounce off of each other,
and
and
we just need to just literally just keep doing it.
Yep.
That way, it's not we don't fall victim to the atrophy of everything that we've just become accustomed to over one. You know, like last week we were here.
Yeah.
Even if it was not usable, it was still it still
Valuable.
was usable.
Yeah.
You know, for us, it
Yep.
was usable in our conscious and subconscious.
Yep.
So, one thing I do want to, and we don't have to, I guess it doesn't matter for me on this episode or this initial podcasts that we hope to actually put out there. But,
Yeah.
Our topics are always going to, just FYI for anybody that's listening, they're always going to range far and wide.
Yes.
They will center a lot around gaming and tech, AI, a lot of these things we talked about. They will go into a lot of existential things and
Introspective sometimes.
many, many other topics because we have a lot of interest. And so I hope that it's able to reach people that have a lot of interest. And sometimes people might last 5 minutes and be like, I'm not interested. You know? So we'll just have to figure out what to put in there
to help
for
with that.
each episode to kind of like indicate a little bit of what we're what the topic spans.
We're gonna get better at planning, I think, a little more ahead with just our topics and being able to lay that out like you just said, just because I think this now helps us lay our groundwork, like I was saying earlier, and so we'll start growing and evolving this idea and trying different things now. But now
it's good. I mean, when we talk about games, you're very fluent.
Yeah.
And so you talk very smoothly about it, and that's good because then that I can at least bounce off of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it leads to topics that I'm familiar with.
I love that
the more we talk about the games and stuff like that, the more familiar I'll become with some of the more intimate details that about them that I don't.
Yeah,
you know what I
and
mean?
vice versa. Like I was gonna say, I like that it's letting us kind of meld these things that kind of hard to do otherwise. Just in our general